5, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his comments in the House yesterday that, quote, intensification of dairy operations will have had some impact on our river quality, but in reality the impact is not great? If so, why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, as I said yesterday, the impacts need to be kept in context as our water quality is ranked second only behind Iceland with a score of 99.2.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, therefore, was Dr. Mike Joy, a senior lecturer in environmental science at Massey University, wrong when he said, as quoted on the BBC, that nearly half of our lakes and around 90% of our lowland rivers are classed as polluted?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it may depend on the definition of polluted, but yesterday the member was in the House, just to give an example of where sometimes people play with numbers, basically claiming that 43% of sites in New Zealand were unsuitable for swimming.
Point of order.
Point of order, Dr. Russel Norman.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister was alleging that I was playing with numbers. You might argue that I made a mistake or I'd got it wrong, but to suggest I played with numbers suggests I manipulated them in a conscious way. That's suggesting that I was acting in a misleading way.
Order. The member can't litigate the Prime Minister's answer by way of point of order. I apologise to the member. I was distracted while the Prime Minister was answering there because I didn't perceive it was a question likely to lead to difficulty, and I apologise for that. But I'll invite the Prime Minister to answer the question again, and I'll listen very carefully, because I think everyone remembers exactly what the question was. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I certainly wasn't trying to be disrespectful to the member in any way, shape or form. I was simply making the point that yesterday, where people take interpretations on numbers, yesterday the member himself said 43% of sites are unsuitable for swimming most of the time. Actually, I've gone away and had a look at that. In fact, it's incorrect. 7% of the 2006 monitored freshwater swimming spots meet the guidelines all the time, but 32% actually meet the guidelines except in certain conditions after rainfall, and even the 11% outside of that meet them in the guidelines 75% of the time. Yes, I know, but he said most of them all of the time. That's the point. People play with numbers, my friend.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I want to hear Dr. Russel Norman.
Well, therefore, was his Environment Minister, Nick Smith, wrong when Mr. Smith said in 2008, the facts are that water quality, particularly in lowland streams, is deteriorating, and that water in many iconic lakes and rivers is unfit to swim in?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no, he wasn't wrong, and that's why on Monday he was at the forefront of leading the National Policy Statement for Fresh Water. That's why this government will spend 5 times what the previous government spent in the 2009 to 14 period. We care more about the environment than Labor does.
Supplementary. Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was Professor David Hamilton, Chair in Lakes Management at Waikato University, wrong when he said yesterday, and I quote, over the past decade, New Zealanders have witnessed accelerated degradation in many water bodies in response to diffuse nutrients derived from mostly agricultural sources?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, not necessarily. I haven't seen the full context of the quotes he's made, but I think we all accept actually there needs to be a balance here between intensification in dairying and environmental concerns. That's why the national policy statement's there. That's why national environmental standards are there. And that is why the government is working hard to get that balance right.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the overwhelming weight of scientific evidence that intensification causes water pollution, is there not a contradiction between the government's goal to increase intensive agriculture by 300,000 hectares and the government's goal to clean up our rivers?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no, because I think it depends on how that's done. I refer the member to what's happened in Opua. The dam management scheme, which was been in place for some time now, it was the supreme winner of the 2008 Canterbury Resource Management Award. It's actually supported by Fish and Game, by local iwi and by the community, and I think it clearly demonstrates that you can actually have increased economic performance and environmental benefits. And so often I hear from the Greens a call for this government to spend more money. Where do they think that money comes from? We have to have a vibrant economy, and I think we can balance that economic growth with good environmental protection. This government's doing that.
Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With reference to the Opua Dam, was ECAN wrong in January when they accepted that the Opua Dam was linked to an increase in toxic algal blooms in the Opihi River, as was reported by their principal surface water quality officer, Adrian Meredith?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I simply haven't seen the statement. If the member wants very detailed answers like that, he should really refer them to the member.
Parliamentary.
Dr. Russel Norman.
If the Prime Minister thinks that we should trade off increased water pollution for more economic growth in the dairy industry, why doesn't he just come out and say that rather than pretend that we can have 1 million more cows and cleaner rivers?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I haven't said that. And what I have said is I think it's possible for New Zealand to increase its economic performance and to improve its environmental outcomes. And that is why we are doing all the things that we have been proposing through the National Policy Statement and the likes.
Question number 6, the Honourable Jim Anderson.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. Sorry.
Point of order, Dr. Russel Norman.
Sorry, Mr Anderson. I seek leave to table the report from NIWA that shows July 2010 that shows the link between intensification and water pollution.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Point of order, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to table a document from the Timaru Herald. I know it's a newspaper, but it's not necessarily that easy to access.
How recent is the article?
The article is from the 26th of January 2011.
No, we're not going to do that.
It's about a Opua Dam.
No, we're not going to worry about newspaper articles this year. Question number 6, the Honourable Jim Anderson.
Mr Speaker,